Welcome, everybody, to Conversations in American Democracy, and we have a great deal to talk about. One of the fundamental issues is our focus on, there's a continuum. All the way on one side, we can focus on national and even global issues. And on the other side, things that are local and don't get the kind of attention I feel, that's my own editorializing, that they deserve. Where do we come, how do we decide whether we want to head more towards the national and global issues or stick with local issues and pay attention to them? Go ahead, Sue. You don't have to raise your hand again. Go ahead.
I personally, my knee-jerk answer would be thematically. So where's the overlap?
Yeah.
Exactly.
By the way, we talked a little bit about that as far as corruption is concerned. Corruption seems to be a link that it appears on the national, the state, the county, and even the city council issues. So, yeah, I would agree. That's an interesting way to look at it. Anybody else have feelings about whether we should be national or local?
Well, we've introduced Kurt, who's going to be bringing us a little bit of the Constitution every week,
Right,
and
good.
that is certainly falls under a national,
Yeah.
our Constitution,
Right.
and under the name, Conversations in American Democracy.
So let's evaluate where we are relative to today, everything that's led up to today. Have we been too much national? Have we been too much local?
Well, I try to bring to the table the correlation, and you
Right.
say it perfectly, of the similarities of reactions. For example, we now hear the word Doge at our city council meetings. We hear the word Doge, which is a federal invention, if you will, at the state level, and how it applies. So I find, and I look for areas that I feel I can affect and move that are based on national things that are going on.
DeSantis created a state level Doge, so it is state level.
Yeah.
But it came from the federal.
Well, it started there, but it
That's
is
right.
now
Right.
officially part
Right.
of the state.
And it's now city council
Yeah.
of Palm Coast
So,
is trying
But
to
it's
do
no
the same
longer in
thing.
the federal, that's all
Right,
new.
I'm just talking about the correlation between actions at the national level are down. A lot of people believe that our mayor, Mike Norris, is trying to be something similar to Donald Trump.
Well, he is. He's a bully.
Worth talking
Yeah.
about, for sure.
but
A bully is a bully no matter where.
But the thematic, Sue, what that you talked about, what theme?
The thematic overlap.
Okay, so I mentioned corruption, and then the Doge. We can talk. Perhaps we should have to spend a little more time working on it. And I don't know whether to say this on camera. You could edit this out, but I think this has become too Merrill-centric, and you don't need my permission to raise it. Nobody needs my permission to raise a topic. But I will put a little effort into finding topics that appear both at the federal, the state, and the local issues, like corruption, like Doge,
Well,
and their problem.
A lot of it is that everything at the national level is gonna be affecting
Trickling
us. So
down.
if we do
Yeah.
not have elections in 2026 because of what's taken place at the national level, it does no good to discuss that.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore it because we don't know what's gonna happen, I understand that, but the national, is weird. I mean, it's really crazy.
Right.
Who would have thought this? Somebody, I don't even think Stephen King could have invented this, or John Grisham, a year or two ago, that these things would have happened. But this is real life, and they are gonna affect us at all levels, but it is, in my opinion, the most important is what's going on nationally, because we could be bombed any day now, and because of the events, or
terror.
recently I saw this morning, I was telling Kathy, Mary Trump told you,
Yeah, I do.
put out about the prisons, federal prisons. Trump was able to award 2 contracts recently to 2 private prisons for in the millions of dollars, 44 million for one, 60 some odd for the other, and they're going to be housing all these immigrants, and that was non-competitive. He appointed them. those companies donated millions to his campaign and to his PACs. So therefore, this is obviously quid pro quo. And Mary Trump feels like that should be more in the mainstream media. We know mainstream media is all screwed up and can't rely on it. What should be in mainstream media, in my opinion, is the fact that all of these normal tax-paying people that have been living here for years, or children that are being detained by ICE, they're scrambling to make these quotas, but we don't have what Trump said in his campaign. Millions of immigrants crawling across the border. That was a bald-faced lie, and this is the result, is that's what they're taking, is people that they can find and build some little bitty case. And it's normal people that are our neighbors, our friends, or employees in some cases, and we don't want it to happen. Trump doesn't have a clue. He was changed by somebody talking to him, probably a rich friend of his, that explained to him, I've had these employees for 25 years in my farm, they're part of the family, don't take them. So he said he was going to hold off on that and the hotel industry and all of that. And then 2 days later, when Steve Miller heard about it and Tom Homan, that's all out the window.
Yeah.
Do those two guys have the reins, do you think?
Yes.
The Steve
Steve
Miller and
Miller
Tom?
is what's
Yeah.
I
running
heard
that,
Trump's
yeah.
playing
Yeah.
golf and they're doing all the executive.
Steve Miller.
Yeah, Steve
has been
Miller.
And the
running
old
stuff.
Republican Guard, there was the Gavin Newsom interview with, two-part interview with Newt Gingrich. Man, is that guy pulling the strings in our country?
Well,
Let me
didn't
tell
Trump
you.
win 2016 because
Wow.
of Jerry Falwell?
I'm
Didn't
sorry?
he get, isn't that how he won in 2016? He
And Newt-
got into
yeah.
bed with Jerry Falwell,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so to speak.
the new, the Newt Gingriches, the other, people that ran the GOP, they didn't go under a rock. They're still around. They're still really running things. They're the secret government.
Yes, yes.
And that fits with, Trump has always been after the approval of the self-stocking people of New York City. The upper echelon of New York
Yes,
City.
yes.
And they have never accepted him, and he's
That's
always
exactly right.
striven for that success. And now he's always in the thrall of, the old guard Republicans who don't much care for him either, since he's not a genuine conservative, but he continues to strive for their approval as much as he strives for, and if you heard his speech from the NATO conference this morning, he wants the Nobel Prize in Peace because Barack Obama got it, and he doesn't understand why he didn't get it either. He probably also doesn't.
Nomination just withdrawn for the
What?
guy who nominated
Pakistan.
him.
Yeah,
Withdrew
yeah.
it.
By the way, they withdrew it? I
They
didn't know that,
withdrew
because anybody can nominate anybody for
Right.
for a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But Trump also believes, of course, his face should be on Mount Rushmore, but I don't think that's happening either. So, just to pause for a second, isn't Stephen King from Maine?
Yes,
Okay, that's why I bring it in. I says, you mentioned Stephen King, I says, can you give a...
but he was a horror writer.
by the way, I
Category you call it.
agreed. We are in a horror story.
Yes.
Is the prisons that Mary Trump referring to, does that include Alligator Outfit Fair?
Alligator, yeah.
I'm not sure, there was
Yeah.
two, I know. I think one of them was Leavenworth.
Yeah, okay, because Vicky was going to come and talk about, she's upset about that, to which I say, if you elect a Nazi, you're going to get Nazi justice in
You're gonna
Washington.
get concentration
If you,
camps.
if you elect a clown, you're going to get a circus.
Since I'm talking, I will admit though, that the local level, for instance, the
Hall Creek?
housing,
Hall Creek,
Hall Creek,
1,800
housing
homes.
has just been back. I don't know if they voted for it yesterday, or they're just putting it back on the table to discuss.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's revived the $8,000 housing.
8,000
and-
units.
But now, so what I guess my point I'm trying to make is that the local stuff is important too. I'm not trying to eliminate local stuff.
Yeah.
But there's just so much. But again, back to the big stuff. For instance, with this Iran thing, security. If anybody's going to get on an airplane, we're going to have, because there's going to be sleeper cells start, and we already have Republicans doing it. The one that's in the jail that isn't in the news anymore.
Yeah. I think the short attention span of the American public is
Well, what
a
I
real
believe what
problem.
our big problem is, you started a faucet, so it's your fault.
Yeah, I,
Is that the media, that's the problem, the media.
okay. But they go after isn't it their job to go after the shiny object? What's the job of the media? What part of their job are they not doing?
They're being influenced by, the money that they can generate.
I just want
That's
to,
the true
them
journalism.
to,
Yeah, that's,
what do you call it, mimic Walter Cronkite, back in the day.
yeah.
When honesty was put on and it had to be verified, it wasn't just spouted out, the lies. So that in the recent case about what Trump said in his little speech, that it was obliterated, and then his team goes out and they spread that as, oh, it's been obliterated, and then Caroline Levitt does her thing and says, oh, that's our interpretation, it's been obliterated, and end of story.
Yeah.
For the news people. I don't know why they don't laugh at him when he said stupid stuff.
I remember when he was
Yeah.
elected in 2016, and it started with the inauguration, right? And the numbers of the inauguration.
How many people were at the?
Oh my
it was the
gosh.
largest
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Speaking and
Attendance.
speaking to the TV, that's very
Right.
silly, but I'm like, why are we giving him attention? That's what he wants
Right.
attention.
Yeah.
And it was almost when he left office, where I think it was Rachel Maddow, our hero,
Yeah.
said something to the effect of, I don't know whether I should cover him anymore, or I should stop. It was like she finally realized that this is part of his game, but they're kind of stuck too, because they feel that they have to inform us. But again, are they being true and journalistic and
Fact-checking,
doing
or
their
they just
due
spinning?
process? Right.
Everything's a spin as far as I'm
Right,
concerned.
and it all goes
Spinning
back
it.
to that, how many ads
I
for
read
how many viewers.
an article about the transportation secretary who's got the family of 11, and he's representative and actually is kind of leading the way of America should have big families and have a lot
Yeah.
of babies.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And he leads he's going to use the transportation department to actually implement areas that have higher birth rates and stuff. He's going to devote more transportation funds to development of transportation related things. I mean, that's
Crazy.
And then we can
That
get
was
the
very
fertile
crazy.
women in there, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. So it's, there's yet another theme I'll have to remember. I'll have to watch and take notes. Autocracy, both at the national level and right down to Mike Norris in the local level, and at all the levels in between. It seemed to be we were run by autocrats.
It's quite evident that Mike Norris is really a MAGA person, and it's interesting if we're debating national versus local, but locally, I've always said one side can overpower the other when there are more of them, and they can sort of circle the wagons around the opposition. And point to the fact that you are a minority. Well, I think locally that's what needs to be done, is to somehow, through the media, through podcasts, through conversation, is to point the finger at just how little support he has, which will isolate the MAGA people apart from everybody else. And that's what we need to start doing. We really need to start isolating the MAGA people apart from everyone else. The moderate Republicans we need to embrace, and regular Republicans, and certainly liberal Republicans. I'm sure they exist.
They don't go together.
But
Political and
No, they
Republicans.
exist. They exist. I'm sure.
So how do you suggest we do that?
I'm just.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
should not offering up a solution as to how? You have thought about that? How do we isolate these people? I mean,
by the way,
Pointing fingers,
yeah.
podcasts.
By the way,
talking about it.
I think taking a page from their book and finding the wedge issues What separates them at now? By the way, I want to refer back to Jim Manfree's statement at the end of his appearance with us at the library that the local Republican Party, and this has been amplified in the press as well, is a mess. I think you may know more about that.
Sure.
That they're one against the other, and they're not getting along either. I think we need to find the wedge issues that separate one from the other, and certainly the more liberal adjacent, is there such a thing? Again, I question, there's such a thing, are liberal adjacent Republicans? How many are leaning towards in that
There
direction?
used to be conservative Democrats, liberal Democrats, and I assume there used to be liberal Republicans and conservative
Yeah.
Republicans.
Yeah.
All leaning, Republicans leaning more toward a conservative bend, but flexible in certain areas. But,
Right.
you know, we don't discuss the nuances anymore.
No.
It's either black or white. It's ridiculous.
It-
There are nuances, and when there are nuances on both sides, all those people are really in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
The number thrown around consistently by the centrist party is 70%. That 70% of the people are actually
You know, you live by the sword, you die by
middle of the road.
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
And if that's your tactic, is to divide, right?
yeah.
And break down communication, which it comes as a result of trust being broken down. Then it almost follows that it would now infiltrate your own group. Okay, so have fun with that.
Yeah.
But I think for a long time, I get very frustrated. I have been getting very frustrated by the divisiveness and this lack of attention or lack of anybody trying to just bring people together.
Lack of civility.
Lack of
Oh, yeah.
Like
civility.
civility, yes, and
You know, when we were at the rally, there were horrible people driving by, saying horrible things and everything. And I was giving them the peace sign. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people in my group who are like, what is she doing? You know?
No, that's a perfect.
Fight, fight,
No,
fight.
no, I was
But I'm
just
like,
this,
we're all
Yeah.
Americans. We gotta calm down, or we're gonna destroy what we have. Everything beautiful about our country. However, then you hear that other argument that there is a whole faction,
Do you know
and I don't know
other
how big
countries
they are
that-
that want to destroy democracy. They
How
don't
do you
want.
fight-
They don't want of the people by the people.
How do you
No.
fight hate but with love? How do you
Yeah.
fight love
right.
but with
Love
hate?
always-
So it's a battle between love and hate. I mean, are you going to love your fellow human being, or are you going to?
And then
hate
we have the
them?
haters holding up Jesus Christ
Yeah, really.
as their, you know, who they emulate, and I'm
Yep.
like, it's crazy and it's chaotic.
Logic has no place here, as
The
I
reason why
constantly
we
say.
have those people that you were referring to is, for one reason, is Fox News. And you know there's other countries that have outlawed Fox News in their countries, in their whole country.
And you
Cannot-
said that news thing, right? It's not really
Not news,
news.
it's
Get that
entertainment.
But-
entertainment.
Yeah.
Right, but that's all they will listen to, or the affiliates that, you know.
And it's constant.
So that's what needs to be fixed, is the
Brainwashing.
word needs to get out, and then these people. So if you go back to that movie that you shared about the brainwashing of my father, if they didn't have that to listen to, they would come to.
That's right.
So that's the key, in my esteemed opinion.
Is the growth,
Only in this room.
is the growth of NPAs, and I don't know what, do you know offhand what we know what there are twice as many Republican registrations as there are
It was
Democrats.
supposed to be 50% Republicans, 25% Dems, and 25% NPAs.
So
That's
an
the
NPA,
breakdown I heard,
it-
roughly.
yeah,
in
is
that
the
area.
increase in non-party affiliation a disaffection with both parties because they're so.
The ones that
Yeah.
I know, they're taking a step back because they are sick of the rhetoric.
Yeah.
And we can accentuate the good things. So I think the Democrats, even though there's problems with the Democratic Party of lack of action, doing not sufficient. Anyway, I think the ones doing these hearings are doing outstanding by, you know, telling Pete Hegseth that he was unqualified for the job and he shouldn't be there, as well as many of the other ones. And telling Kristi Noem, what you're doing is illegal. You can't, you spend all your money. What do you know?
No,
All of these obvious things.
who asked Christy Noam what habeas corpus is, and she said,
Oh, yeah, that was
as I
yeah.
did. Unfortunately, the hearings are covered, of course, on C-SPAN, which is great for putting people to sleep. And
Or you can find them on other
yeah,
channels.
yeah, I know you can
I've
find them.
been-
You
been
can find them on other
watching them.
channels. But and I quote Pierre Tristam all the time, who holds our elected officials, no matter what party, in high esteem because of their ability and their willingness to have to sit through the longest, most boring meetings with details that cause your eyes to glaze over.
Back to that movie though.
But yeah,
Joe
brainwashing one.
Rogan was a big instrumental in the brainwashing, wasn't he, in the movie? Joe Rogan?
Yeah, oh gosh,
Yeah.
everybody
But
that's
Joe
in the upper
Rogan is
echelon.
now against Trump and
Yeah.
is bashing Trump to some degree.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge change.
But these are fractures in the Republican Party
Yes.
that we need to learn to exploit. And I
Yes.
think,
So I'm curious, Joanne, your passion and your concerns and aware of the national things as best you can, you feel that in this environment with this podcast that we need to bring those up and talk about those things, thinking that we're going to share information maybe others aren't aware of all the things that they're aware of at the national level due to lack of news coverage or whatever, and that's what you see the value in staying national, talking national, and trying to educate whoever's watching our podcast on the things that are going on. Because I know you bring that out, and you've talked and brought up things I wasn't even aware of, and I kind of pride myself on paying attention to it. But for me, I'm very cautious at reacting to one guy saying one thing about one subject until I can hear it multiple times from different areas as a confirmation. And also, it's so fluid. I was having a conversation with my 35-year-old son the other day, and I was asking him about his news source, and he says, I get it from TikTok. And I immediately went, tell me why. And he goes, because it's real time, faster than any national or local news can put it.
Also, they're short.
But
Yeah.
you-
Yeah,
I-
but
You
she-
asked her a
she was
question,
talking
she
about-
hasn't answered it yet.
Yeah.
I wanna hear her
Well, she
answer.
just said because they're short.
Well, that was
No,
a.
Now,
no,
now,
TikTok.
you-
I'm talking
go back to the
about
original
the
question.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot even what the question.
Well, it's just,
Well,
the
you're not
natural
going
value
to-
of it.
No.
Back to what you just
You
said,
bringing your-
news being fluid, et
Timely.
cetera. Have you heard about there was an attempted mass shooting in Michigan 2 days ago?
No?
I did not know that until I was
Yeah.
looking for things to bring up in this meeting, but that happened, it was thwarted, and no loss of life, but, except for maybe the shooter or something, I didn't read all the details. Back to your question.
Oh, yeah, I did hear
The
that.
appropriate topics for the conversations in democracy, and what I feel like, as far as national versus state, it's hard to answer without me putting some thought into that, because this is the project is you guys putting this out. I was asking her about the number of views and where the views are cut, where we think the views, and when she puts out the word, more people, but they're all local. It's a local topic. If that's the audience that you want to address, you're spot on. If you want to address more in the democracy, but we've got you for Palm Coast, so maybe branching out into further areas for this forum is going to draw more people. I don't know if you're here to get people. Of course, that's
True.
always a nice bonus, but we're just here to put the word out to people. But I would think that news, as you say, there's so much news that we can't even keep up ourselves. So touching on some of the major national, because of how it trickles down and affects all of us. So again, back to the.
And I was giving you prompts and thanking you for bringing things that I'm not even aware of that we can open and discuss, because ultimately it doesn't, to me anyway, it doesn't matter what or where the news comes from. It's sharing it and putting out there that we have tried to verify that it's real news and not mis or disinformation, which is a danger we all face when we're on Facebook or we're on TikTok, as I was telling my
Perfect
son.
example is the library.
Well,
Did you see that letter?
I've responded to it already, yeah. Go ahead, so what about?
so anyway, exactly, that kind
Yeah.
So I want you and I want us all
Wait,
to
let's be specific.
broad.
Yeah, the idea that there's a rumor about that they're gonna close the library, which is a total myth, and there is no such, well, there may be a rumor, but it's not at all true. Nobody's talking about closing a library, talking about just
It
weakening
started and then
support.
it started spreading like
Yeah,
wildfire
yeah.
and action being taken and.
Right.
but it turned out-
False rumors go around the world while the truth is still lacing up its sneakers. That's,
Well, it's not all,
No, it was actually one of the 4 options that was presented
Yeah.
to the county
yeah,
and the budget for
Yes.
this,
yeah.
Next year's-
There's a scaled down,
and it was only one of the commissioners that said, oh, by the way, did you see line item 3, which talks about closing Palm Coast?
And talk about
Right,
a tone and
right.
But it
management,
was,
that
but
committee
it
is
did
like just
get-
off the charts
it
in
went
negativity.
wildfire.
Which committee?
But no, the people who were out, the Flagler County Commission were talking
Yeah.
about it, and the way they were talking to each other
Interesting.
about the process was very negative and very disturbing.
Then leads me to believe that the source of the rumor is the Flagler County Commission.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
and
very
they do
interesting.
float
Yeah.
ideas like that.
And there
Yeah.
is a MAGA influence, and that's how they deal with those
Absolutely.
things that they don't
Yes,
like.
yes, that's
Information.
the model for behavior. Very.
And it is-
I think the most important topic to be covered is a way to provide information in a way that we can get perhaps a MAGA person or a Republican that's in the middle of the road tunes in, and if we were able to present information that, how we've verified it was valid and it's the truth, and other news sources are saying the same things, and this is an important topic, and go into it to educate them how much they are being misled. They don't know. Their brain is like the movie said.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't watched it, have you watched it?
Yeah, no,
I
I-
think it's
I
an
actually want to
excellent
add to this before we
Yeah,
go
it's very-
flying on
I'm
another
very-
topic. I want to add to the answer to that, and that is that, for me, the purpose is to let other people know that they are not alone, that there are like-minded people having these conversations, so that when they're, sitting in a cherry red like we are in the middle of Flagler County, and they think they're all by themselves, there are other voices expressing concern about the very same things they're thinking about.
Right.
So to me, that's the whole purpose of doing any of this, is
And
to
I-
let other people know,
Because-
even if they can't get out, they can't get to a meeting, they know, oh,
That's
I'm not crazy, I'm
contagious.
not alone.
It's contagious.
Yes.
Which we observed, any of us that were at the rallies,
Yeah.
for No King's Day.
Yeah.
The cars going by were just raising our spirits, and
Right.
we were raising their spirits, and it
Yes.
just kept
Gotcha.
rising, rising, rising.
Right, we are not alone, we're in this, together, other people think like me, and there's safety in numbers. Maybe we don't have the numbers that we need, for sure, we could always use more of them,
I kept
but
wondering
at
how
least
many
they
of
feel a
those,
little bit safe.
how many of those people in those cars voted, in the last election, and how that, is that gonna influence them?
That's an issue too, yeah. Joanne, what were we gonna say?
I think it's, I agree 100% with what you were saying, but I think this forum, the national news also affects those people that we're talking
Yes,
about.
yes.
So as limiting it is limiting the topic, and so I personally, and that's the only reason why I was coming to these meetings, is to like-minded discussions, even when it was separation of church and state meetings. I am personally not interested in the local. I had never been to Florida. I had been to Florida, but I never lived in Florida until I moved here, and I realize now that it was a serious mistake, and I'm rectifying that. But I'm just not interested in and you guys know all the history of all of this stuff. I'm not interested. It's the national, and it impacts everything.
Yeah. No question about it.
And I like the warm fuzzies that
Yeah.
I've not been getting.
So, speaking of that, so trying to choose which topics we're gonna talk about, right? For me personally, I feel the best topics are the ones that deal with what are our core values. There's something about wars that, whether it's tribal wars or it's, European type wars, there's something about wars that brings people together, and I think in those moments it clarifies what our core values are. I don't think that post-World War II, like immediately after the war ended, that there were very many Americans who did not understand who we are and what we stand for. Just take a look at the chart that shows all the executive orders from 1933 to the present. You look at Trump's numbers, which as of April 29th were 185 executive orders and 35 written into law, as contrasted to FDR's numbers in 1933 within the first 100 days, where he had written something like 94 executive orders and something like 86 of them had already been signed into law. To me, that speaks to his ability to have his finger on the pulse, and the reason why he was able to have his finger on the pulse was because everybody was very clear in that moment, because we were being challenged. We were post-World War I, stuff was going down in Germany, we had just survived through the Depression. We didn't like seeing people dying on the streets because they have no income, so he put in all these programs, he did the rebuilding of the infrastructure.
The reason why the numbers are the way they are is because Trump is an idiot. He does not understand the legal process, how to get laws. He thinks he can sit in his throne and write things down, and everyone's gonna have to follow him, or else he'll send the mafia after
Well,
him.
obviously,
You
he
know,
doesn't have the
I'm
support.
sorry, but that's the,
He doesn't
We can bash Trump, and he has a lot to do with this, but you can't deny that you're talking about values, and we need to discuss those. What are we, we use the term pendulum swinging. So the pendulum is obviously swinging in a more conservative bend.
Right, I agree.
The question is, we need to discuss our values as it bends, which ones work with that movement and which ones don't. And we need to discuss the movement of that pendulum. We obviously are going conservative, so we need to discuss,
And
do we like it?
And we have to ask
What
ourselves.
do we accept, what don't we accept
We
as far
have
as?
to ask ourselves too, would it not be a strategy worth discussing that we accelerate the movement of that pendulum to the right? Because I was in education and I saw it going like this my whole career.
Yeah.
And it seems what's happening, in my own humble opinion, I don't think we went too far, but there was a whole group of people, and I think it had something to do, again, I could be mistaken, when Barack Obama legalized gay marriage in this country. I think that all these Christian
That was
people
as
said,
far as the
"That's it.
pendulum
Yeah.
was gonna swing
That's
left.
it, we gotta do something, we have to mobilize."
Yeah.
So what's it
Possibly
going to be
the case.
now for the more progressive thinking people? And would it not be a good strategy, after the election, my friend and I were talking, she's in New York, and we both agreed, hey, they elected him, now let's see what he does. Let them reap what they sow. And
That's
so-
exactly what's happening.
That's the
Yes.
James
So
Carville.
that's exactly what's
Yeah.
happening, and it happened very quickly.
But I was gonna say, to that point, and I think if I went on TikTok, but I'm not a subscriber to it, but I would find the pendulum is actually switched. It
Well,
is
that's
going
my
back the
question.
other way now.
Yeah.
But your point is certainly valid about finding middle ground on issues as far as back to the original topic of what we can do here. I think this is wonderful that we have different people with different ideas that all come together with a common goal of progressive politics, democracy, etc. And we have wonderful ideas. Core values is a beautiful focus for themes.
We need
and
to get
can
back
just
to the
do different
basics.
ones every
Yeah.
month.
But unfortunately, I think it's human nature to, have the infighting until we have a common enemy. it happens in tribes,
Absolutely.
Native
Well, that's what he
American
did. That's
tribes.
what
Yeah.
it
They
was.
were all fighting all the time until the Europeans came in and tried to.
If
and then they
aliens
went,
would just,
"Ah."
if aliens would just come down to Earth.
Right.
Right, we would unite
Right.
to.
Oh,
It's a look.
In 2026, Alan, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Just
Aliens
early,
are
they
They already
coming.
have.
Mike wants to say something.
Okay, but you know, it hasn't been proven, it's not,
By the way,
you
you
know.
need,
No,
you need sharp.
When
you
it's
need-
proven.
Yeah, you need
No,
sharp
no, some would
elbows.
argue it's proven.
Elon Musk proves it.
So I was hearing, and I wanted to ask the group, does the Democratic Party need a leader?
Oh,
There was all over the Sunday conversations, they were saying the failing of the Democratic Party, our views. You know, why are you a Democrat? I ask that question to a lot of people and I get hundreds of different views
Sure.
of what they think it is. And the question was posed by multiple people going, the Democratic Party needs a leader. And so I kind of dug down into that a little bit and found most parties that have leaders turn into what kind of leadership? A leadership of one. Donald Trump just directed the Congress to stay over the weekend, 4th of July, to get his bill. That's a leader. I don't believe the Democrats need a leader. I
Single
think we
leader.
need a caucus, which is, by the way, what did Mr. Jolly say during his presentation over again about the Democratic
Coalition.
Coalition?
Yeah.
A group of like-minded people are all working together to get there. Great analysis. I heard one leader rowing a boat isn't going to get you anywhere because you're just going to go around in circles.
yeah.
Kind of like a Lincoln
Right.
Project.
Well,
And just what you said, you know, that
Yeah.
you ask 100 people, you get 100 different answers as to why they're a Democrat. And that is,
Right.
that's it.
Exactly.
That
And the
is
value-
it.
and the
That's the
value-
beauty of it, the
Right.
diversity. It's not, yes, we need a coalition, but one leader cannot represent all of that.
No, and shouldn't. As we've learned over and over again, and we've seen
It
in
won't work for
2026,
Democrats.
and we're seeing now, a leader at any level in government is non-functional because whether it was the issue with Biden and his health or whatever, or year after year of various presidents had health concerns, the country kept running. We kept moving forward. We were able
But
to
we
do
still had-
And
things.
that's how founding fathers wrote the Constitution.
Yeah, but there
And we're
was-
back to that,
but they were
establishing that there was
surrounded-
leadership all over the country.
But they were
And not
surrounded.
one person.
But they were surrounded by talent, knowledge. 93% of Trump's first-term cabinets changed or were fine. Some of them went to jail. In Biden, not one.
No,
In
no,
the whole
exactly.
4
It
years.
was wasn't it stunning?
But the
Yeah.
point I'm saying is, what I've worked in a lot of big companies, and the leadership of the CEO was the one guy that made the decision, did things, and he was constantly being redirected by the board of directors, stock market, or whatever. So there is no one thing.
Well,
But what do you guys think? Does the Democratic Party need a leader?
No, I think
is
we
it
need a
necessary?
coalition. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
think
what
we-
you
yeah.
said. I mean, we could go around the
Right.
room, but I don't think there's anybody here who's gonna say we don't need a coalition of
No,
people
and-
working in that
Absolutely.
direction.
So now you have to define what is the coalition made up of? How do we represent the breadth of the American people? Okay, one off the bat would be gay people. That would be, if the coalition
The whole
had a representative
LGBTQ
of all
plus.
LBGTQ,
plus,
and
if they plus.
women is certainly another, and let's
I
go
think
down the
coalition
list,
has
you
to
know,
have
how many
very-
should we have?
Very formal rules of engagement as far as how they discuss, because, you know, I used to say this often in the classroom. They made this shift, this almost overnight shift to standardized testing. And this is how we're gonna tell that these kids are way better prepared for college. When my own son, who started his FCAT in 3rd grade and graduated from high school, I queried Pierre Tristram in one of his articles, where's the data that the state was gonna provide us to show that my son is so much better prepared
You were supposed
for
to
college
forget.
now than the other? And that, because that, my feeling in the classroom was that the way we were doing it was too messy, right? It's too messy when you ask students to write an essay answer. It's so much neater to just have them do a multiple choice response. My point with the coalition being that I suspect there's a lot of people in our country who don't like the messy. They don't like the arguing, they don't like the group and the length of time. I mean, look what just happened with Iran and Iraq. One of the central issues is Trump, and his whoever, made this unilateral decision to do this. Why? Well, the founding fathers, from what I heard, set it up that it has to go through Congress for just that reason. They want the argument, they want the mess, they want the discussion, because that eliminates or it minimizes the knee jerk, right? And the hope is that you'll come to a more
consensus,
wise, sensible,
Yes.
Decision.
some
Take a beat.
sustainable.
Take a beat before you move.
But that doesn't work for kings, okay? It does not
Right,
work
so
for
that's what I'm
kings.
saying
He's
too,
a
but-
king.
And there's a lot of people that don't want to participate. I think that's that's one of the reasons why we're in the situation that we're in. Is there's a lot of Americans who just want to go, just give me somebody who speaks to
Right.
my heart and my mind, and let them
They
make
don't
all
wanna
the
do the work,
decisions.
but they don't wanna do the work to
That's
get to
exactly
that.
right.
And that's what's the hard work of democracy.
But in your
So-
study of the executive orders, I know you did a deep dive on it, and you shared
Yeah.
some
A
with
bit,
me.
yeah.
What is, in your mind, the difference between the Eisenhower and those earlier EO's executive orders and Trump's?
Yeah, it just feels like those administrations had a better finger on the pulse, because
Country.
when FDR said, this is what I'm proposing, Congress was behind him, the Supreme Court was behind him, and it moved through rapidly and efficiently and effectively. So I would
Because they were for
query,
the betterment of the country, as opposed to the ones that are coming down now, which are like random
They're
things that are
self-serving.
happening,
Yeah.
and they're not really to better the country.
And
Like,
that's-
who wanted to change the name to the Gulf of America from the Gulf of Mexico?
And that's-
You know,
And
those
that-
kind of
that's-
crazy things.
mostly.
Yeah, what did we get out of that? Maybe the publisher of books or some books that have to now recreate all those.
Rand
books.
McNally
Who got
has to do
something out of that?
so again, back to like the common themes,
Yeah.
right? If we can start narrow, again, with the writing, my students sometimes thought the bigger the topic, the better. It's not the bigger the better, because you're gonna get to a place where there's too many ideas, right? And you're gonna have a nervous breakdown. The narrower the topic, the better. And it's interesting how when you narrow it down and you start figuring out, wow, what's really at the heart of that? What's really at the heart of that? And that's what these coalitions do, right? And
Right.
the congresses, where is it?
Right.
Because it's ambiguous until you have those, hammer it out.
Right, hammer it, exactly, that's what
Hammer
we're
it
meant
out.
to do, we're meant to hammer these things out and not just him flying off the handle with these crazy,
Right.
what was he thinking moments when you wake up in the morning and say, what fresh hell is this? What happened while I was sleeping, what did he do at midnight last
But you
night?
can't have any of it without conversation.
Exactly.
No.
You can't have any conversation without trust.
Yeah,
So-
and
Anyway,
all those
Joanne-
have been
Joanne, what were you gonna-
eliminated.
I wanted to say that you countered your own bringing up the topic of a coalition versus a leader by bringing up Biden. So Biden was a leader, but he used his cabinet
Amen.
of qualified,
Mhm.
normal, sane people. Our other example of present day politics is only looking for worship, loyalty, not the quality. And he's the authoritarian, and he's the king on his, okay, so it's a total different concept.
But you bring
So
up,
back to the answer of the coalition versus a leader is gonna use the resources, and our government is basically a coalition.
So to you,
We're
it's not
taking the
singular.
input
Not-
from all
Not the government, we
branches.
have.
Well,
The one that's-
if you
it's
throw out
being
everybody who
Right.
disagrees,
cheated,
yeah.
the one that's being ignored and
Right.
cheated.
I use it, think about it this way, Joanne, and I understand what you're saying. If an alien, somehow something came down and plucked Biden out of our universe,
Nothing would have changed.
the country would have
Never.
had a direction and people would have known what to
It
go.
would have kept going.
My feeling is, if that were to happen to Trump,
Good point.
it would freeze.
Blow everything
Because
up.
they would all look at everybody going, and I have witnessed this at the executive level in businesses when the CEO, the boss of the company, for some reason, medically or otherwise, wasn't there, and all the directors sat around the room fearful to make a
Yes,
decision.
Okay, so-
You're forgetting Project 2025.
But
It would
that-
go right on, Steve Miller would
Good
continue
point.
calling what he's doing, Tom Homan would still do his job, all those wackos. It would fall apart and crumble because we don't have anyone that's qualified. But it would not immediately
And the difference between
cave
a,
because 2025
Right.
would take over.
and that's the difference
And they're already
between a
involved.
coalition and a leader.
And probably 2025.
And
Go
somebody
ahead.
was telling me today and reminded me during the concept of the Constitution and the fighting of a ragtag group of people, militiamen, following under George Washington after we won after 8 years of incredible fighting, all of the people in power went to George Washington and said,
Be our king.
we be our king, be our
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah, he said
And
no.
he said
Yeah.
No.
no.
Yeah.
Because he knew that was not the structure.
That's what we
Yeah.
just aborted. That's what
Yeah,
we just.
but that's,
So I'm just putting
We
it
have
out
a
there.
coalition in the present day government, in my opinion, and it was those people behind him at the inauguration. That's it, that's the
yeah,
coalition.
and those people wanted an autocrat, wanted a
Yes.
dictator, because
Well,
the
he's
trains
just
were on time with
figurehead.
dictators.
They're running the stuff,
and
Project
democrat.
2025 people are running it. Leonard Leo's group, what's that?
Yeah, I don't remember the name.
The
But I was just
group-
bringing up
not the
that
Liberty-
Republicans.
What's the group? Lincoln,
and-
Not the Lincoln, but
No,
what's the
Lincoln
other group?
Project's the other side, yeah, I don't know.
Midas Touch or
No, no,
all
no,
of
the group that's,
Is that Proud Boys or something?
No, on the other side.
not the, we
No,
have,
Leo
on our
is-
side,
yeah.
we have George Conway with
Right, but
Liberty.
Lincoln Project, yes.
Sure.
Lincoln Project, what's the other project?
I'm
that's-
trying to think of it.
The
with
bad,
Leo, yeah.
Heritage?
Heritage.
Heritage.
Heritage,
Project.
okay,
Yes,
yeah.
Okay,
Heritage
so
Foundation.
all of those people would take right over.
Sure.
Yeah,
Somebody
So-
would have to come out.
But to answer your other question, I have been aggressively trying to bring a conservative thinking person to sit on my podcast, to be available to freely speak and defend and talk about the actions that are going on the conservative side, and I've had zero support right now. So I'm at the process of trying to go to them to get into a conversation where we can have a conversation and they can defend and justify and show purpose in the goals and objectives that we see and the value behind all of the things that are happening that we all see and report every day. And none of them are willing to do that.
Well,
Well,
it's-
what
because-
would their motivation be?
yeah.
They're winning
They're winning.
right now.
They're
There is no
either
doubt.
winning, but the principles of autocracy is, I don't think, the leader thinks for me. So because I don't think, I don't have anything to say on your pod. By the way, and the name of the podcast is?
Ponderings from Palm Coast.
Yeah, we did
But I
promote it,
reached
yeah.
out to the REC chair.
The
Yeah.
problem is they can't justify because a lot of theirs are arbitrary, right-wing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
But they can't tell you,
right.
I mean, the best one is the trans, okay?
Hmm.
It's 0.01% of the population or something less, but they have taken all of that flack.
Yeah. Yeah.
And back to whoever brought up about dividing, that's the perfect
A wedge issue, yeah.
thing that King does, is divide in
Yeah.
politics. So
Yeah.
he did it well. and they're still doing it. So that's what we need, is why, yeah, good luck on that. Sorry, Mark,
Well,
can't help you.
Then
Oh, I couldn't.
that raises
I'm
the
trying.
issue.
I'm still trying.
That then raises the issue of whether Christy Noam is really Stephen Miller in a wig and makeup.
But it is interesting, I was at the pool today, and there are several Republicans, not willing to come on,
No.
but are very loud and vocal and know who I am, and we were talking about things that were going on with the attack. And I gave them this thing to ponder. 2028, the House completely flips, the Senate has a 63% majority, and we have a young, exciting, progressive Democrat. And the first thing he does is put 4 nominees to the Supreme Court, which will make it through because we have the House and the Senate. The second thing he does is order amnesty for all undocumented immigrants. These people sitting around the pool were losing their mind.
Even though that's a Ronald Reagan.
I was gonna say, pinch me, I have to wake
Yeah.
up.
But the
Yeah.
point
I was
I was trying to get them to realize is the boundaries and guidelines of our democracy are frail, fragile, and respected. And if you want to know and see respect, look and see what's going on right now with the Senate trying to work around the directions from the
BBB.
Yeah,
board,
the-
I can't
The
never
boss.
remember. No, there's the bird law on CRs, and there is a
Parliamentary.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. The parliamentary has come back and said, all this that's in your bill's got to change if you want to submit it on a 51%. The Republicans in the Senate could pass a rule to negate that.
Certainly.
But Senator Thune, being a career free thinker for the most part, knows that that guardrail is there for both parties. And that is how the founding fathers and how things were done. Donald Trump in his first and now in his second are breaking those, pushing them, challenging them. And as I said to this guy today, you guys are doing a great job of teaching Democrats on how they can act, not to say they would, but they can act, and I use those examples which blew their mind of how we can make those changes. And I love what you're saying with your EO in Roosevelt. He had all of those ducks in a row, and he put in place things that we all benefit today and got our country on the right track.
Back to what I said before, and the reason why is 2016, everything has changed. This time is obviously much worse. And it all is because of the fairness doctrine that was eliminated
Right.
and Citizens United. If we
And
didn't have those two,
many of those,
we would
yeah.
still be in that boat, even if it was on the Republican, more conservative side. But we would have reason, we would have competency, we would have many things that we don't have. We may not agree with them.
Sure,
But then
I agree.
pendulum
Totally.
will swing, and let me tell you what's gonna happen in 2026. All of that's gonna start to come into play with the midterms. What about New York City mayor?
No, I was gonna raise that issue,
Oh,
but
no.
I think
Lots
we're
to
running out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Blow them
yeah.
out of the water.
But that's a very interesting,
A Muslim.
yeah,
A
well, Muslim is
Muslim.
one issue, a blatant socialist is another issue, and I'm all for free bus rides for everybody.
And guess who the
for
Democrats
example.
were for?
Not him.
Andrew Cuomo.
Cuomo, yeah,
They're not for
absolutely.
him. They don't
Yeah.
like that mayor.
So,
Yeah.
you know, you have a point about leadership and lack thereof. And
Yeah.
I don't even know the definition of a
Well,
coalition,
that's
but I
just-
think
yeah.
that
Fine.
the points of what you were making is a group of qualified people, but there has to be somebody that signs the docs. You know, somebody has to be the leader.
Yeah,
Right. Good point.
The New York mayoral exemplifies the belief that elections are to elect generally the evil of the two lessers.
Plus, the governorship in Florida is gonna go to David Hogg, is that?
You think so?
Oh,
Yeah.
He's gonna win it,
You
and the
think so?
state is gonna
Okay,
switch, or it needs to
interesting.
be purple.
Yeah.
And in the
Has
national
he announced
level.
he
Yeah.
wants to run for governor?
Yeah, I
Oh,
believe so.
David Hogg has it?
Is
has
it David
announced?
Hogg or David Jolly?
No.
I'm sorry, Jolly.
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 Hogg is
Yeah,
the
Florida.
guy who just got
Right.
thrown off the
What happened?
Democratic National Committee, but he's a Parkland shooting survivor.
Right.
Hogg, yes.
Yeah.
Who resigned
I
from
met him
whatever.
and so, yeah.
But,
At any rate,
Absolutely.
that leaves
So-
us with a good direction as to where to go next week, and we'll do it again next week.
Just a little, jump in and say that, we are gonna be continuing the Constitution conversation.
Yes.
It's just that the person who was, putting that
Kurt,
little.
Kurt McCauley
Kurt,
is going to, and
was not able to make it today, and also, you know,
Right,
have
and
the
we're gonna speak about the
conversation.
immigration
Immigration and what it takes.
and how to, pass your,
Citizenship test.
Right, what
okay,
it takes
right.
to
Mike's
make it here.
wife recently
Right,
became
yeah,
a citizen.
Right.
or took the test, yeah.
So that'll
She
also be
hasn't been sworn in
maybe
yet,
next week.
right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Sworn-
Oh, she was sworn in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
right.
good, okay.
Send
As
us
soon
off.
as you pass it, then you get sworn.
Yeah,
in.
well.
and how much
I-
protection does being a nationalized citizen have in today's world?
Apparently not.
Well, you know what, and if you were born here and.
Yeah, that
or
could,
his- and
we're
his
just
family-
waiting for that
All you gotta
decision.
do is,
Discussion
if you're
for
hanging
another
around the
day.
wrong
Yeah.
Home Depot at the wrong time, you know.
Even
yeah,
though
that's it, yeah.
Rubio,
Marco
Marco
Rubio.
Rubio.
Marco Rubio and many others are children of immigrants.
Product.
Yeah,
Discussion
yeah.
for another day.
Yeah,
Send
yeah.
send us off,
We
man.
have lots to
Who wants
discuss.
to support
Thank
Barron,
you all.
Don Jr., Eric?
Yeah,
et cetera?
exactly. You know,
Ivanka.
and the question of whether Barron was turned down from Harvard, and that's why Harvard has been targeted as
Yes.
an open. It might be fake news, might not be. At any rate, we have lots to talk about, and therefore make plans now to be here next week,
Yeah.
same time, same station. And thank you all.